Alrighty then, we have arrived yet again. Episode number number too legit, too legit to quit.
Hey,
Hi.
hey.
All right, hello, beautiful people of social media and the internet, and anybody that decides to watch this little old show that me and my buddy down there, Vince, is doing. Welcome to so far. We made it to the second episode, so we're obviously doing something right. Yes, folks. Yes, I would like to welcome you guys, and of course, I am your faithful, great, amazing, chubby cheeked host. I go by the name of LAREN Maxstar Moore,
I'm the co-host, Vince Eustace.
and you have made it to the second episode of Popcorn.
And boo.
Oh, the show tackling topics in pop culture, music, film, wrestling. God, we even bring Whoopi Goldberg in, and she comes in and does her thing, and Mike Tyson's going to be coming soon. We just cover it all. We're such multitaskers, are we not, Vince? Are we
Oh,
not?
I feel you are. I definitely need to be focused on one thing at a time, so I take your lead on that.
By the way, honorable mention to my co-host Vince for doing a great job piecing the show together and doing all the technical aspects, as well as his lovely wife and his sister-in-law. I want to give you guys all honorable mentions because you guys are awesome. Yes.
Well, appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. So, Vince, you ready to start the show? What do we got? What do we got first, my man? What do we got?
First we're going to talk about how COVID-19 is just blowing back up again. It really hasn't gone away, but it really has started blowing back up again because a lot of people aren't really paying attention to a lot of the, I guess, advisements in terms of wearing masks, social distancing. We've seen a lot of cities and states reopen things to sort of reboost the economy. So we saw restaurants and bars reopening. And because of that, it's like Chris Rock bit, it's grand opening, grand closing, because everything is shutting back down again.
Oh, man. It really is, dude. Wow. And it happened so quick, man. And I knew it was coming. And like I was saying on the last episode and stuff that we've even talked about with this pandemic, like, I get it again. It's people are going stir crazy. They want to go out. They miss spring break. Mm-hmm. So all the spring breakers, the people that are age, 20 to 30, really want to make up for that. They want to go out and party and get drunk. And they were like, oh, we didn't have our spring break. We're millennials. We want to fucking make up for that. So the minute they started opening up things, there was just no hesitation. There was no warming up to it. Places were just filling up. Like as if COVID went away, and it has gone nowhere. Yeah. And like I said before, I've even indulged a little bit, but I've been going to very safe places that really practice social distancing and still are taking precautions. See, the problem is, as you know, and as our viewers now know at this point, the problem is that a lot of these places are just opening, and they're not indulging in any safety practices at all. And they're being warned. The governor, the council people, the city they've warned these businesses, like, look, if you're going to open up, we're going to allow you to open up, but you have to have safe practices and precautions. And a lot of these businesses just aren't doing it.
Yeah.
So now what's happened is the COVID cases are just back skyrocketing. You know, there's a couple of places I've driven past on the weekends, especially since things have opened and obviously are back closed again. But when things were kind of open, I just would drive by and I would have to shake my head because I could see from outside how packed it is. And you could tell nobody in there is wearing masks, gloves. There's no social distancing. It's just people on top of people on top of people. In the wrestling world, we would call that a schmaz, when it's just a gang of wrestlers on each other. That's what that shit looked like. And I was just shake my head and be like, yep, not going in there. Not happening. So
even if you're one of those people who don't believe that the mask is working or that we're blowing this all out of proportion, just please
just try.
Just humor us. Just wear the mask, social distance. And I know you think this is some big ploy for the government to control us and be like, oh, if they wear masks, that means that we can take away all their rights. No, just I swear to you, if you just play ball. Just play ball. We can all go back to normal at some point. And then hopefully they'll have some sort of vaccine and we'll look back on this and tell our grandkids about this crazy time in 2020. But in the meantime, you're not helping. Just wear the mask, social distance. Just help us out.
Just a little bit. Just a little bit. See, that's all. Just an iota. That's all we need. Just a little bit. You got to try. You got to try, people. People are dying.
Something.
People are dying. But this is where we're at. So, as a result of that, they, like you said, they are shutting shit down yet again. Some places are still remaining open. They're allowing restaurant-style places still be open. There are actually some bars that I know of that are still open because they have an operational kitchen. But overall, it's going to happen again. And eventually, I think in a few months, it's going to go back down. It's going to be down to another full-on shutdown again. I think they're going to shut down everything, and it's inevitable. It's inevitable, and I think it sucks. It does, because everybody likes their freedom, and a big part of the problem is you've got all these Kins and Karens. Yes, we know what those two are. Those are the very typical disgruntled, bitter, middle-aged white people who like to complain. They're going into places and complaining about not or having to wear a mask. And there's multiple videos across the internet right now of just these women and these men are just fighting employees and just walking.
There's one in your neck
places.
of the woods in North Hollywood in Trader Joe's.
Yeah, it's just it's ridiculous. Like, these are precautions. These people are doing their jobs, and you're just going to bombard your way inside a business and be like, "Fuck you! I'm not wearing a mask because I don't believe in this," or you're impeding upon my freedom. Stop it! Stop it! Like Vince said, use your fucking common sense. It's common sense. These are grown ass people doing this and throwing tantrums. Get it together, you guys. Like I always say, you got to do better. We all have to do better. This is a pandemic. Take it seriously, folks. Take it seriously. All right. Well,
so that wraps up the serious PSA portion.
Right.
Now let's move on to other stuff happening in pop culture that isn't necessarily current events. You mentioned before not one of your favorites, but like a movie you really enjoyed growing up was Twister with Bill Paxton and
rest in peace.
Helen
Rest
Hunt.
in peace. Yeah.
Well, it looks like Universal is looking to reboot the movie, and I know everyone's kind of like, reboots, leave stuff alone. Hollywood has no original ideas, but they're talking about rebooting the movie. They're looking at Joseph Kosinski, who is currently the director of the new Top Gun movie. It got pushed back, but is going to be coming out. It looks pretty good. I just want to hear your thoughts on Twister, the original, the potential of a reboot. How does this sit with you?
I'm one of the few people that don't mind all of these older films getting rebooted. I don't think it's entirely necessary all the time. I think some movies are getting sequels and reboots that are they're just doing it for the sake of obviously money and monetary gain, but they're doing it because they just want to bring back the older audience who grew up on these films just to pack these theaters. Well, not now, although AMC is talking about reopening, but we talked about that last episode. But I don't mind it. Listen, the original Twister was a very entertaining film. I remember actually sitting in a movie theater as a kid. This was summer of 1996, I believe it came out. I don't know the exact date, but it was 1996. So I was a kid, and I remember going to the movies with my family to see Twister, and I remember it was such a talked about film that month, and probably that whole summer, most of that year actually, because another big movie came out that year. There were a couple, but if I can go back in time and remember the child me remembering what 96 was like, the two biggest movies that year were probably Twister and the very first Scream. And I remember
Independence Day was huge.
And it's true. I actually forgot about it. You're absolutely right. So I would put that in. There was a top five, but I'm not going to go through all top five. But the top five, three movies within that top five were Independence Day, Twister was up there, and Scream. And I remember Independence Day, Twister, and Scream being the talk of the school that I was going to at the time. That's all anybody could talk about. And Twister was definitely one of them. And Twister was innovative because it had, at the time as a kid, I didn't realize this, but in hindsight, as I got older, apparently, if you read up on it, it was an innovator as far as sound goes and sound mixing. It and I don't mean the score. I mean the actual sound effects, the actual sound of the film. The mixing, the mastering of the film was incredible for 1996. It was one of the first movies to have that type of Dolby Digital enhanced featured sound. So I remember watching the movie and being blown away about it at the time as a kid, but not realizing how innovative that actually was until I got older. Like you said, the movie starred Bill Paxton. It had Helen Hunt. Bill Paxton is no longer with us. Rest in peace to Bill Paxton. A man that had a very, very, very good acting career. I remember him as the bully brother in Weird Science.
Oh yeah.
That smoked a cigar and was the asshole to the two main protagonists. And he was young. He was probably in his early 20s, late teens when he did that movie. He was also one of the punks in the original Terminator. I don't know if you remember that.
That's right. Yeah.
When Arnold Schwarzenegger's character is introduced and he comes across those punks and they're like, "Hey!" They pull out. One of them is Bill Paxton as a youngster. So
yeah, he worked in a lot of Cameron films.
He did a lot of Cameron. Yep, Titanic. Yeah, was he in Avatar? I don't remember.
I don't remember. I know he was in True Lies. He had a very memorable role in True Lies.
Yes, he was very candid about how small his penis was. And, that was actually one of his lines.
He had an iconic role in Aliens. Game over, man, game over.
He was one of those actors where the minute you heard his voice, you saw him, you were like, yeah, that's Bill Paxton. I know that guy. And Cameron, like you said, James Cameron actually, I would say, made this guy he made him a star, made him being in those films made him a leading man. Mm-hmm. So he starred in Twister, like I said, along with Helen Hunt. Also, another actor who's no longer with us, a very young, why can I not think of his name right now? Oh, Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Oh, right.
God. A very young Philip Seymour Hoffman was in that film as well. He played one of the storm chasers. So rest in peace to him.
He's fantastic.
Yeah, and he grew to. That was one of probably his first roles. I don't think he did much before then. That was probably one of his first major roles in a major film. And he talk about flourishing after that. That man became an A-lister. Again, very entertaining film, and it was iconic for its time due to the sound, also the special effects, how realistic the tornadoes looked for 1996. The special effects were incredible. So to harp on that and talk about it, and to answer your question, I mean, think about it. If they had great sound editing in 1996 and great special effects in 1996, imagine what the fuck they can do with it now. I mean, a lot of hardcore 90s pop culture geeks like you and myself might be like, like you said, fuck that, we don't want to reboot. I say, fuck it, let them do it, dude. Let them do it. I just want to, and it's not because I'm going to run to the theater because it's going to bring back all these nostalgic memories, because it really is, because they're going to do a different take on it. It'll be based on that film. They're obviously they're gonna update it and make it more youthful and cater to the millennial crowd a little bit more, with I'm sure a lot of millennial-esque references, kind of like they've done with a lot of films that have been rebooted in the past 10 years. I'm gonna run to the theater or be anxious to see it just for the simple fact of I want to see what they're gonna do with it technology-wise. I think it's gonna look incredible. It's gonna definitely look incredible. The story might suck. It might be a shitty reboot or remake or whatever you want to call it, but I think the sound editing is going to be even better, and obviously the special effects, because we have all this new innovative technology now in film. So I say, hey, fella that directed Top Gun Maverick, whatever your name is, I think it's a foreign
Joseph
name.
Kosinski.
Yeah, the Kosinski, whatever your
Nope.
Joe Kokransky, John Kokransky, whatever your name is, yes. Hey, do it, man, and nail it, and I will check it out at some point. I don't know, Vince. I don't know if you're interested. I don't know how big of. I know you were a kid as well, and you remember the hype behind it, but I don't know if you were a big fan of the film.
Yeah, it was a pop culture phenomenon. I'm not a huge disaster film fan.
I love that genre.
I don't hate them, but it's I'm not gonna rush out and see it. So I'll probably wait till it I mean, granted, like it looks like we're not going out anywhere anytime soon in terms of going to the movies. So, but I'll probably wait till it's like streaming on demand and watch it one night.
Or Redbox, or on a free downloading site, or some illegal shit, something illegal as hell.
Which hopefully doesn't take away from the viewing experience, because I know movies like that, especially back in the 90s, like it was such a spectacle. It had to be seen on the screen with that like sound. So I'm sure it'll still be cool watching at home, but like I hope that it doesn't take away from like a lot of the viewing experience.
One of the most memorable scenes in that film, there's a few, but the I would say the number one most memorable scene in that film, which was, it was a little on the unrealistic side. It had some realism to it, because you could actually kind of maybe, because you've heard stories of things like that happening during tornado storms out in like the Midwest and stuff like that. But there's an iconic scene where they're driving down the road, they're chasing the storm, they're chasing the tornado, and they are going down a highway, and then all of a sudden the camera just cuts to a shot of the front of the truck, and a cow just randomly flies by, and they all look at it like, okay. And it's this really funny. It's actually it was made for the purposes of comedy. You could tell it was, but I've heard stories of that happening, cows being tossed around and animals being tossed around during tornadoes. So I think they were just harping on that realistic aspect of it, like, hey, there are stories out there. And also they were trying to do a really funny visual comedy bit, and it worked. And it's one of the most iconic scenes in that film. And hey, if you haven't seen it, go back and see it. You search for it online. I don't know if it's on, I think it's on Netflix, actually. If it's not on Netflix, there's so many other sites you guys can go on and find that film. Go to even YouTube. You can buy films on YouTube. I'm sure it's buyable or rentable. Check it out. It's a 90s classic, and I think everybody should see it. So, and if they reboot it, then reboot it. Go for it, man. All right.
Speaking of classics, another movie that we used to watch growing up was the Batman series.
That is a Danny Elfman theme. All right. Sorry, I just had to get that out.
So the 1989 Tim Burton movie had obviously Michael Keaton as Batman. Yes. It was a little controversial at the time. Everyone was like, he's too short. He's too much of a comedic guy. He's Beetlejuice. Yes. We don't really see him as this brooding, square-jawed, tall superhero. But he killed it, obviously. He did such a great job. Then stuff happened. Val Kilmer became Batman. Then George Clooney became Batman. They kind of ended it. Brought it back with
Christopher Nolan stepped in.
Yeah. Then Affleck, and now they're going to have Robert Pattinson do it. So
the Batman.
They're all over the place with Batman. There's been so many Batmans. I love Batman, so I'm fine with it. But there has been a news story circulating that Ezra Miller, who was in the Justice League as the Flash, is going to have his standalone Flash movie after all. And they're looking to get Michael Keaton in the movie as Bruce Wayne. And they're saying that he's also going to be in costume as Batman.
That's awesome. That is incredible. I mean, let's address the elephant in the room. Michael Keaton at this point is probably, about 60?
Yeah, he's a little older.
He's a little older, and there's nothing wrong with that. My point is, it's obviously, it ain't going to be the Michael Keaton you saw in 1989. We know that. But just the nostalgic aspect of it, and just the fact that he's reprising a role that pretty much made him a star. I mean, he was already a star before then, but that was the one that made him a leading man. And I mean a leading man, to where people were like, he's actually a really good actor. We could take this guy seriously. He isn't just the Beetlejuice. He isn't just the Mr. Mom and all, or whatever, all the movies he did prior to Batman. So the fact that he's coming back and putting on that suit, and I think he's gonna look just fine, dude. I mean, he's not in bad shape. He's been, it's funny. Michael Keaton disappeared for a while. I don't know if you remember that, Vince. He had a run in the 80s. He had a run in the 90s. And right around the late 90s, Michael Keaton just disappeared. I remember as a kid saying to myself, what the fuck happened to Michael Keaton? Mm-hmm. Like, you didn't see him in much. And then I think one of the first things I saw him in when he kind of made a comeback and he started research was a movie called White Noise, which was like a supernatural thriller film. Mm-hmm. I can't remember what year it came out. It's about 20 years old. And I was like, oh, Michael Keaton, where have you been? You know, then he started doing a string of movies, and then they were spread out. And then, like, in the past 10 years, he really made a huge comeback with Birdman.
Mm-hmm.
He was in Spider-Man Homecoming.
So great in that.
Yeah, he was a fucking great villain in that as the Vulture. Yeah, it was the Vulture he played. He's one of those actors where he's going to get the job done. There's never been a Michael Keaton film I have not seen where I was like, I don't want to say blown away. There's never been a movie I saw with Michael Keaton in it where at some point I said to myself, wow, Michael Keaton he's a hidden gem. He's an actor that should be praised more for his acting abilities. Birdman is one of my favorite movies of all time. People always ask me what my favorite movie is, and I never really have an answer because I like too many, but I've kind of narrowed it down to my top two at this point. And so far, to me, the top two, my opinion, the top two greatest films I've ever seen is Birdman and Django Unchained. Two incredible films. And people might disagree with that, and people watching this episode might be like, wow, those two, that's all you got? Yeah. You're damn right. Those movies are both incredible films. Birdman, incredible film. He had a stellar performance in that. I think he was nominated. He didn't win. Did he win? I know he was nominated.
He was one of the favorites to win. Eddie Redmayne won for the Stephen Hawking movie, and and I'm not gonna lie, Eddie Redmayne did a great job. At least from what I saw, like the bits and pieces I saw from the movie, like he did a great job. But man, you can't tell me Michael Keaton didn't deserve it.
Like, Birdman's yeah. No, I agree. And Birdman was an excellent film. I'm sure you agree, man. It was a phenomenal film, and I think you're right. He should have gotten something. I am glad that the movie won Best Picture, though, didn't it? I do appreciate that they made some type of right decision when it came to that film. But incredible film, and Michael Keaton is just one of those. Like I said, he's just one of those hidden gems where you're just like, he reminds me of like Jeff Goldblum and a lot of actors who you have had leading roles, but you still overlook their work, and you don't sit down and realize how good Jeff Goldblum is. You don't sit down and realize sometimes how good Michael Keaton is and has been. And Jeff Goldblum is just another example of that. But I love Michael Keaton, and I'm glad he's gonna be making a comeback as Batman, and I think it'll be good. I think it'll definitely be good for the culture.
Yeah, I think I got a couple of theories on how Michael Keaton is going to fit into this Flash movie as Bruce Wayne Batman.
Well, break it on down, Vince.
All right, so I don't watch the Flash TV show or any of the DC shows. I hear they're great, but I just haven't really got a chance to watch them. But I know they did like a Flashpoint sort of crossover with a bunch of different alternate universes where they had Tom Welling from Smallville come back and be Clark Kent from an alternate universe. They had Brandon Routh, who was already in that universe as a different character. They had him as reprising his role as Superman from an alternate universe. So I think I could see them maybe not like not having him be Batman in the Ezra Miller universe, but have like if they do like a Flashpoint or something, he can maybe be the Bruce Wayne. And then we'll either see that Bruce Wayne, I'm thinking, as either a Dark Knight Returns type, where he's sort of like the older, more grizzled, like broken down, but still willing to like throw down type, or a Batman Beyond type Bruce Wayne, where he's
which is what a lot of people want that. I've been seeing countless posts of people saying this should lead into an actual standalone Batman Beyond movie.
That would be great.
With the older Bruce Wayne.
And have it be Michael Keaton. Have Michael Keaton be the Bruce Wayne in the Batman Beyond movie.
Absolutely.
Although even though he got ragged and he's probably considered to be the worst live action Batman since the '89 version, I do think that at some point in the future, maybe not now, he's still kind of young now, he's older. I think George Clooney would actually make a fantastic, because he's a great actor. He looks the part. He could kind of make up for it if he wanted to. Obviously, he's doing a whole bunch of prestige films, but I could totally see him killing the role as well. Keaton's my number one choice.
Yeah.
But I could see Clooney also being an older Bruce Wayne in a Batman Beyond movie.
And I would even say Val Kilmer, but he is horribly out of shape. No, listen, I think Val he's another one I grew up on. I think actually Val Kilmer is actually a very good actor. or can be. His version of Batman actually was, I would say, Michael Keaton first, of course. Then probably I know a lot of people would probably give me shit for this. I wasn't a huge fan of the Christian Bale version. He did a good job, but it was just too much of us. And coughing all on the camera, giving the camera COVID and all that. Stop coughing on the camera, talking like this. And it was too much of that. So I would have to put him third. I would say Michael Keaton. Val Kilmer was a great Batman. I think he did a good job as Bruce Wayne. Christian Bale, George Clooney actually did an okay job as well. I haven't, it's funny. I've yet to see Affleck's version in that he did in the Justice League and in Batman.
I like Affleck. I thought he did a great job. I know he's kind of divisive, but I thought he was fantastic.
Yeah, and he stepped down from the role, and we'll see. We'll see how what Jacob from Twilight Zone, from Twilight. Yeah. Watching that movie was like being in the Twilight Zone.
Yeah, I'm sure.
No knock to Twilight series, but that movie definitely was for children, yes. Teenagers alike.
Or teenagers.
So, teenagers more so. But we'll see how Robert Pattinson does. We'll check him out.
I think he's going to do fine. He's been kind of building up his resume. I haven't seen any of his movies, but apparently he kind of wants to distance himself from Twilight. He's like, I'm a real actor. I'm a serious actor. And from what I understand, he's been doing a great job. So yeah,
he did a film not too long ago that he actually did some dramatic acting, and they said he did phenomenal. I can't remember what film it was, but it was something just recently.
Was it Lighthouse?
I think it was Lighthouse. Yeah, I think that's exactly what it was. So hey, kudos to Michael Keaton. It'll be great to see you back. And if the theaters are open and if they're practicing social distancing and it's safe and it's 5 years from now, I will definitely go see it. All right.
Yeah. All right.
With that being said, Vince, where are we at, my friend?
We're moving into the music portion. First article is about Queen Bee. So, of course, I'm talking about...
Britney Spears?
Yes, exactly. When you say Queen Bee, you think Britney Spears. At least that's how she thinks. And some of her fans think. So, obviously, we're joking.
Yeah, we
sort of. When I hear Queen Bee, and when you hear Queen Bee, we just automatically assume Beyonce.
Queen Bee, Beyonce, yeah.
Yeah,
Queen Bee.
That's her name. That's what she's been called all the time. But apparently, Britney Spears was on Instagram and found this picture or portrait of like these sort of bejeweled. It was like a bumblebee and a crown over top of it, and I think it was supposed to be a Queen Bee. Maybe even said Queen Bee. And then Britney wrote, "To all my fans that call me Queen Bee."
This is it right here. I've actually got a picture of it. I don't know if you can even see that.
Yeah.
There it is.
Yeah, that's it.
And, so to all our viewers, that's what she posted.
So she said, "To all my fans that call me Queen Bee, I believe this would be more accurate." Now, granted, it could be taken out of context. She's saying like, "Oh, I have fans who call me that." I'm not saying I call myself that or I am that, but I'm saying I do have fans because as much as Beyonce has a passionate fan base. I don't want them to get mad at us. As long as they have a very passionate fan base.
Vince, slow down, man. Please don't get the beehive after us.
No, passionate, loving, loyal. Brittany also has a passionate, loyal fan base. So I don't doubt that they call her Queen Bee. But because she even thought of insinuating that she was Queen Bee, the Beyonce beehive in question that we mentioned went nuts. So it became like a war between these two factors of these two very talented, iconic women and musical artists. But it became this huge fight between the fan bases over who's the real Queen Bee, with no mention of Lil' Kim, who's also been called Queen Bee. I know we don't really veer into pop too much, but we're like when stories come up, like we enjoy pop music. We enjoy
music.
Britney, Beyonce. So what are your thoughts on? And use your words carefully, because again, we don't want to infuriate the fan bases.
No, we don't. Listen, this is a very independently filmed and put out show already as it is. So to be honest with you, angering the beehive, whatever the hell they call themselves, would actually be in our favor because it would probably make the show bigger. But
yes, but we'd be canceled immediately.
But I digress. I digressed. Exactly. So I digress. You know what's funny about this whole thing? I'm kind of reading the article right now, and apparently the woman that did the artwork, her name is Jenna Patty, went on record of saying that the image wasn't for Britney or Beyonce.
No.
So she's basically saying you two bitches are arguing over something that wasn't even made for you guys. So she's like, this is like, slow down. It's not neither one of you that I did this for. So I had to put that out there because that to me that's hilarious. Because Britney and Britney Spears's fan base and Beyonce's fan base are going to blows over something that was for neither artist. Right. So listen, I'm pretty sure Britney. It's Britney, bitch. I'm not a girl. That's my Britney impression.
It's accurate because you're not a girl.
Yeah, I'm not a girl, but not yet a woman either. One day. All I need is time. I am literally quoting the lyrics from that song, and you are helping me successfully do that. We should be ashamed of ourselves. We should be ashamed of ourselves.
I'm pretty proud. This is a defining moment. I think a milestone in the show.
It is.
We're peaking right now.
And listen, no knock to Britney Spears. I love some of her songs. Listen. And I told you this before. I have to bring this up real quick. You know, I grew up this hardcore hip hop head as a rapper, as an artist myself, as a backpacker. I come from the backpack lyricist era of the late '90s, early 2000s, and yet amongst all that, as hardcore as my rap life was during that time in the late '90s as a kid, there would be times I would sneak and turn on MTV and watch pop shit. I would do it. I really would. And I could not tell any of my hip hop head friends that I was doing that because I've told you, we've talked about this before. During that era, if you didn't listen to anything other than Eminem, Wu-Tang, Redman, Biggie, I mean, all the hardcore backpacking lyrical shit, even underground rappers like Idea, the Visionaries, Tech Nine, if you weren't bumping that and they found out you were listening to anything other than that, you got made fun of for eons. It just did not stop. So anything that I liked, like a Britney Spears or a NSYNC or anything of that nature during that time that I just was like, oh, that's a catchy tune. I couldn't tell none of my friends that. I couldn't. I got butchered. I remember my friends came over once and found out that I had a Will Smith CD. They found out I was getting jiggy with it. And my God, did the teasing not stop for weeks. Oh, you soft. You listening to that da-da-da-da. Listen, it's just sometimes there was some music that I let, still to this day, that might be.
You were just prepping for the millennium.
Yeah, right. There you go. And I had that album as well. I had like his entire catalog, and I was just made fun of for having Will Smith shit. But, you know, Britney was part of that era, and so, listen, she was part of an era that is defined in history now as one of the biggest eras in the history of music, and that was the whole pop explosion of the mid to late 90s and early 2000s, and she was one of the proprietors of that. Mm-hmm. Would you agree? She was the Madonna of that time. She was the number one biggest female pop star, but star period. She was like
I would argue. Like, I know Mariah kind of had like a more consistent run of hits from the 90s because she started earlier. But I would say like once Britney hit, I don't think there was a bigger music star, man or woman, in any genre, period. Yeah. It was Britney, bitch.
And Britney, bitch. And, you know, it's funny, you bring up Mariah Carey. She had a string of pop hits, but Mariah Carey was always equated to more R&B, you know, because her career started off doing ballads. You know, power R&B ballads. She grew to start doing pop hits. But we're talking about, you know, she had to kind of get to that level. Like, Mariah hit hard. When she came out in, 1990? I remember seeing Vision of Love, the video, which was the world, which was mine, but also the world's introduction to Mariah Carey. I remember how big that was. Oh, my God, this white girl that could sing. And little do they know she's half black.
Yeah. Well, we all know now.
We all know that, but at the time, everybody was just like, "Oh my God, this white girl that could possibly blow Whitney Houston out of the water." It was a big thing. But even still, as far as her pop success or crossover success, she had to kind of grow She had to kind of grow. Britney from the gate was like, bam.
Yeah.
From the gate, there was no growing. She was crossover immediately and blew up and was the biggest, so, kudos to her for stamping her place in the music history.
We can have two queens. We have more than two queens. We can have multiple queens in terms of pop music.
Exactly. And that's my point. The point of me bringing up Britney Spears' illustrious career is the fact that at this point, she's in her late 30s. She's legendary. She can kind of hone the title queen. She's a queen. Yeah. She's the queen of music, just like Beyonce. And I'm not going to go through Beyonce's entire career, but from Destiny's Child to her, because she had a very long career as well. We'll be here all day talking about these women's careers, but Beyonce as well, a trendsetter. One of the biggest female solo acts of all time. Now at this point, one of the biggest musical acts, period. Yeah. Male or female, any gender. So she also has the right to be called Queen Bee. Like, she's had an illustrious career as well. So basically, what I think they should do, in my opinion, is, and they've actually been talking about it, and I think they should do it. What they should do is bring back the show Celebrity Deathmatch, like they've been talking about doing, and have Queen Bee versus Queen Bee, and have Britney and Beyonce go at it, the two Bs, and see who mutilates who, and then that's how it'll be decided who will hone that title of Queen
in claymation form, of course.
In claymation form, because we don't want these women actually chainsawing each other in real life, because that would be very messy. No, in the form of claymation on MTV. Celebrity Deathmatch. That's my opinion. And MTV, get her done.
If they're rebooting Twister and everything else, why not?
Right. So, what can I say?
Speaking of, I guess, that era, we're going to be bringing up some other big musical acts. Ja Rule, 50 Cent. Ja went viral.
Yes, he did.
It's Gyro.
What would I be without my baby? He sounds like Christian Bale. What would I do without my What would I do without my falafel? Him and Christian Bale should do a track together called The Raspy Voices. Yeah. The whole track should just be them.
So if you haven't, I know you've seen it, but if you're watching and haven't seen it, Ja Rule went viral with this very low-budget commercial for Papa Christos, which is this Greek deli in Los Angeles. I didn't know it was actually out here, so once the pandemic goes down, I'm going to have to check it out.
Yeah, because I love that type of food. I love Greek Mediterranean food, so that'd be great.
Well, Ja Rule, and I don't know if you picked, I'm sure you picked up on this. It was kind of a parody of...
I'm actually watching the video right now. That's hilarious. Oh, this is hilarious, dude.
Yeah, he's got some John Witherspoon influences in there.
He's wearing an I Love Greece shirt.
And he's also wearing just socks, like no shoes, in front of a green screen.
And sweats.
So Ja Rule, this video went viral just because it's a national pastime now. Everyone was clowning on Ja Rule. 50 Cent, obviously had to respond. It was like,
oh, of course.
50's one of the all-time great trolls, and he said something along the lines of, "Oh, I'll have your whole label, like you messed with me. I'll have your whole label selling falafels." Yeah. And then Ja Rule came out and said, "Oh, this is all part of this TV show that's coming out where celebrities market with different things." And he's like, "I'm a marketing genius. I'm a marketing guru, a wizard. The fact this whole went viral and everyone's talking about it, like everyone thinks I'm a clown, but really I'm 5 steps ahead of the game," which might be true. Like everything he's saying makes sense, but everything he does, and I want to get your opinion on this, scene as a hip hop guy. You're from Queens, both Ja Rule and 50 are Queens, but I've really Ja Rule is just, I can't find the words for it. Maybe you can I don't want to badmouth him too much, because obviously he's done great in terms of music and success, but there's just a cringe factor with him at times.
Listen, I mean, I haven't been back home in quite some years, but just growing up in Queens and even being out here in LA and knowing the history, I could safely say when it comes to more of a hood factor, 50 Cent is a little bit more respected
Mm-hmm.
because of his gangsta appeal and the things he's accomplished. I mean, we'll get into that in a second, the whole beef between those two. But let's just talk about Ja Rule for a second. Listen, the man is a musical genius. A lot of people do not realize, and I'll never forget, it was actually I was signed to an independent label at the time. This was probably around about 2003, 2004, during Ja Rule's, major solo run when he was killing, when his albums were all going #1 in the early 2000s. I remember sitting in the studio, and I was in a rap group at the time, a duo rap group, and we were recording a song, and we got into a conversation randomly about Ja Rule. And I remember the CEO of the label, it was an independent label they were called Therapy Records. They had like ties with Def Jam. That's a whole nother story in itself. Don't get me started on that. But that's something we'll talk about on another day, is the Max Star career and stuff and all that. But anyway, we were in the studio, and Ja Rule was just randomly brought up. And it was actually the CEO of that label that we were working with that said to me and my partner at the time, he's like, listen. And he was right. I didn't think about it at the time, but he's like, people don't realize how good of a songwriter Ja Rule really is. Not just his own stuff, the stuff he's written for artists, for R&B artists. Like, he could write a song. Like the stuff he wrote for Jennifer Lopez. He wrote for Mary J. Blige. There's countless other artists he's written for. And I agree. And if you listen to some of his stuff, you could tell he's got a knack he knows how to make songs. As far as a rapper, Ja Rule's never been that great to me. He's okay at best. Ja Rule is much like Tupac to me. There has never been one line I could think of in his career where I was just like, ooh, damn, Ja Rule murdered that. Like, I've never, sorry, Ja. I say that like I know him, but I'm like, you never know who could end up seeing this episode. Look, sorry, not sorry. I'm a fan of a lot of your music, but it's just, as a rapper, I've never really been impressed by Ja Rule. He is one of the greats, and I think he is a musical genius. I will say that. He could write a song, he can make a song. But he's just not that thing.
Yeah, and I was even when he was blowing up, even when he was blowing up and like the #1 guy, I was like, I gotta listen to it, but I would never like buy it. I'd be like, oh, I'm about to dance or something. I'd be like, okay, like we're all dancing to it, it's fine. And then and then I remember he did the video with Ashanti where they were doing Grease.
Oh, that's your kiss, your lips. I love it when you call me baby. Yeah. That's actually one of my favorite songs by him, Mesmerize. But that video was ridiculous. Yeah. Right? It was kind of stupid.
Yeah, so I remember watching that video and being like, this is corny. Like, this is I'm not really feeling this.
Yeah.
And then I remember like 50 Cent, like that was, 50's been saying stuff for a while, but like 50 was starting to become mainstream. 50 was starting to be like, man, this guy's like corny. This guy's like the worst, blah, 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 blah. And I started being kind of like, yeah. I mean, I was already kind of thinking that, but so everyone says like, oh, we all love Ja Rule till 50 came around. I was like, I was already starting to not be about Ja Rule, and then 50 was kind of saying stuff that I was like, right? Like, I had no idea like their history.
That's my point exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, and so then when 50 came out, it was just like sort of refreshing and just like real cool. I mean, if you don't mind, like getting into, I guess, the Ja Rule 50 history, it's like, and then everyone said that like 50 kind of made fun of Ja for singing, but then he started singing. But I always saw it as different because Ja was like trying to actually croon, like actually sing like R&B songs.
Yeah.
and he wasn't a very good singer. And then 50 wasn't like crooning. He just had like sort of melodic hooks.
Yeah.
Or he would kind of like rap in a kind of like melodic, and he never like strained his voice, never tried to hit high notes. It was just kind of more like catchy little
rap singing. Rap singing. We used to call it rap singing, where it was just the rapper that did melodies, like you said, did good melodies, but wasn't really trying to blow.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can go back with I mean, that whole era. Me and you were talking about that. I think last week we were discussing it just amongst ourselves. The whole Benzino, 50 Cent, and Ja Rule. beef that was going. Eminem was involved, and Dr. Dre, and so it was basically The Source versus Murder Inc. versus Aftermath, G Unit, Shady Records. And you want to talk about a clusterfuck, dude? It's like how people. I'm trying to compare it to how it was for a hip hop head. So for a hip hop head, when there was a beef back then, you didn't have really internet. You didn't really have too many sources other than the radio, magazines, or like underground mixtape actual CDs that you had to buy off the streets. And it was usually your homeboy or your homeboy's homeboy that was like, yo, here, that new da-da-da disc just dropped. Yo, I got the CD. Let's go to my house and listen to it. You didn't crowd around a computer screen. I mean, you had, obviously, the internet was, we're talking about the late 90s, early 2000s. You had internet, but it was very basic, and it was nothing you could really stream. It was all dial-up. You had to wait. If you did download a disc track or an exclusive, it took like 3 days for you to get one song. It would take 3 days. But this is what me and my young friends did, and that beef was anything during that time that was topical or contemporary beef. You gathered around the radio, or you gathered around the stereo and put on the CD, or you ran to the store to get the magazine to get the beef, to get the beef story. Our ears would be glued to whatever at that time to hear the new Aftermath Shady Records disc, or the new Murder Inc., or the new Benzino. Like, that's how much that meant to us, like that culture, that thing. And Ja Rule and 50 were literally at that time. I would say also Jay-Z and Nas with their beef around that time. The two biggest beefs were probably Jay-Z and Nas and 50 Cent and Ja Rule. And then Eminem and Benzino. There was quite a few after that. But if somebody were like, what were the top two beefs? I would have to say Jay-Z, Nas, and 50 Cent and Ja Rule. And those guys were at each other's throats. And a quick side note, Murder Inc. was going through a huge federal case during the time. Irv Gotti, I think he got charged with like racketeering and all this crazy mafia shit that he was fighting. So when 50 was coming at Ja Rule couldn't really say much because they were going through a trial at the time. So he had to take it a lot. And boy, 50 was hurling them insults, dude.
Throwing just like haymakers, like gut punches.
Vince, when I tell you, and you probably remember this too, when I tell you there was a diss track every week about Murder Inc., yeah, 50 was going in.
Yeah.
Ja Rule couldn't really say much. He finally started going in back at him, but Murder Inc., Murder Inc., yes. But 50, G Unit and Shady and Eminem and all that camp, Obi Trice, D12, they were ripping Murder Inc. to shreds on a weekly basis, and I got to be honest with you, it was great.
It was very entertaining.
Very entertaining, very entertaining. But to wrap this up about listen, if Ja Rule wants to do falafel videos in his socks, or talk about hummus, listen, if it's a check involved, and from what I understand, he's been relegated, which is another thing that was in the news. He's kind of been relegated to performing at house parties. I don't know if you saw that video.
I did see that. 50 was on for that.
50 ripped him about that. He's been ripping him for 20 years. He's been on Ja Rule's neck for 20 years. And it's funny. They dropped the beef for a little bit and then picked it back up. Apparently, Irv Gotti and Ja Rule and 50 still have a disdain for each other. But if that's what the man wants to do, hey, let him flip around kebab and lamb and falafel and Kalula beef and be happy. Let's be happy for Ja Rule. That's what I think. Let's be happy. Let's be happy for Ja Rule and his hummus. That's all I got to say about that.
All right. It's very entertaining, the beef. It's been compared to WWE from time to time, which is a good segue into our wrestling segment. Do you have our music set up?
Yes, absolutely. And listen, it wouldn't be a wrestling segment without the likings of the 1, 2, 3 kid. Hey! The wrestling segment with me and Vince. Yes, his name is Vince, but your last name's not McMahon. It's Eustace. Let's talk about the sex tape with Sean Woman in China.
No,
let's not talk about that. It's a 1, 2, 3 kid. It's the wrestling segment with me and Vince. Yay! Woo!
Hey, stop bringing up the sex tape.
I know. God, geez, the joy that Sean Waltman and his little spandex and his tights that said 1, 2, 3 kid on it brings me such joy to my childhood. And then to think that was him. He was the blue face, blue chipper baby face. And then it cut to some years later, he's in a sex tape with China. Wow, things have changed.
All right, so making a hard shift from that.
Yes.
We don't talk about Impact Wrestling that much because, to be honest, no offense, they're not as relevant as they used to be. They were kind of the second-tier wrestling promotion in the United States. They weren't even close to competing with WWE, but they had some moments. They had some innovative stuff. They had some great stars who are now in WWE.
Yeah.
But Impact, as of late, has just really not made a blip. So we are going to talk about that a little bit, just because they had a champion, world heavyweight champion, was a woman, Tessa Blanchard.
First ever in history, by the way.
Yes.
In any promotion.
Exactly.
Yeah.
She is the daughter of the legendary Tully Blanchard, and she has been released from the company. She was the champion, the first woman champion, like you said, of any company, and she was released. So we're going to talk about a lot of stuff here. WWE is looking, the rumors are that they're going to sign her. AEW is obviously in the mix. And then there's also talk about, is she worth picking up? Not from a talent standpoint, because obviously if she's the world champion, she can hang. But in terms of a personnel, because there are rumors that she's actually pretty racist, which in this environment, not a good look, because everyone's going to go digging and talk about these stories. You were saying that she's even been kind of like anti-woman on some stuff.
Misogynistic.
Thinkings. Yeah.
Female misogyny. Yeah, that's crazy.
So, just I don't know how much you know about Impact and Tessa Blanchard, but just based on what we know, where do you think she should land, or where do you see this going for her? Because she is, like, aside from all her personal stuff, she's one of the hottest free agents in wrestling right now.
Yeah, she just that whole, her breaking that record she broke and setting that historical bar, which, I mean, here's the thing. She has done something that's never been done before and never can be topped at this point. There will never be a first heavyweight champion female. She's done that. She's done that. So she's in the history books as the number one female to accomplish that. There will be nobody that could do that now. And she'll be, in the history books as being the only person that will ever be able to do that. Be the first time, heavyweight champion, female champion. Sorry, they're letting off like fireworks all over the place around here. I don't know if you noticed.
That's what they do everywhere.
It's hard, kind of annoying. But Tessa Blanchard, based off that alone, her getting that accolade, she is, like you said, the number one free agent, and she is one of the biggest draws right now. Mm-hmm. As far as if anybody were to bring her in, she's an automatic draw. Unfortunately, there has been some very controversial things that I've heard and read about her. Some which might be false, some which are accounted as very factual about her racial views, and even her views on even the gender she is, which is female. She's very critical of her own gender, and like you said, we're in a climate right now where race relations is at all-time high, and feminism and feminist and woman empowerment is at an all-time high right now too. So from a political standpoint, it might be a terrible idea for WWE or AEW to pick her up. Listen, I don't personally think WWE is going to necessarily want to be involved with her because, as you know, WWE tend to run away from that type of publicity. they usually distance themselves from that type of publicity. Anything revolving, I hear a kitty.
Yeah, that's Keaton. Sorry.
No worries. First name Michael?
No.
Took you a minute there. But no, back to that. Yeah, WWE they usually run away from stuff like that. That's just a what do they call it? That's just a PR nightmare for a company like WWE. AEW, I think, is more willing because they're a very edgy, non-caring. We're trying to kind of not like the way Eric Bischoff and WCW were doing it, but they do kind of have this attitude of we're trying to stick it to Vince McMahon.
True, but they've also banned Linda Hogan and Hulk Hogan for being racist, and I feel like they're actually very progressive in terms of who they bring on. But I will say that, like, I know WWE is probably less progressive in terms of who they sign, but they are very aware of the optics of these types of signings.
Yeah, they stay away from stuff like that. Yeah.
I would say that WWE, their women's roster, as great as she is, doesn't really need her. Where AEW, kind of one of their weak spots right now is their women's division. Not to say the women's division isn't great, but compared to the WWE and the NXT, there's so much talent in the WWE NXT, and I feel like AEW isn't quite there yet. So getting a Tully Blanchard could help sort of boost their profile in that area.
And it could. And like I said, she is a huge draw right now because of her being the first female to accomplish heavyweight championship status. But she's a very controversial figure, and I don't know if either company or either promotion wants to deal with that type of flack. Maybe. I don't know. And as we get further into the segment, we'll actually discuss some of the things that Tessa Blanchard has been accused of.
We can talk about it now because I think.
Well, listen. The first time I even, again, I'm not much like you had mentioned. I'm not a big TNA fan. One of the greatest segments I will say that I've seen in TNA was the Flair versus Flair segment between Jay Lethal and Ric Flair. I don't know if you've seen that segment.
Oh yeah, it's great.
It's all for those who have not seen it. Google or go on YouTube and type in Jay Lethal versus Ric Flair, and it's this incredible segment. Jay Lethal does a spot on impression of Ric Flair to the point it's scary. He sounds just like him, and he's black. So think about that for a minute. He's a brother, and he does probably a better Ric Flair than Ric Flair. It's scary.
Ric Flair said that. He's even gone on record. Than me.
Oh my God, he's actually gone on record and saying that Jay Lethal is incredible with his impression, to the point that Ric Flair was the one that pitched the idea for that program between those two. He was like, "I want to work with Jay Lethal." When Ric Flair was in, this was about 10 years ago, when Ric Flair was in TNA before he came back to WWE. With his legend, for a Legends thing, because at the point, by the time he came back to WWE, he was already too old to really be wrestling. So he came back to just make appearances. But he did have a small tenure in TNA, and that was one of the greatest segments. Other than that, that has been a shit show. TNA has been struggle city, and Tessa Blanchard has flourished over there, but it was unfortunately the first time I ever really heard about this woman was because of the controversy.
Yeah.
I can't remember exactly where it was, but apparently, was it New Japan? It was a promotion she was in. It might have been even TNA. I don't think so. I think it was an indie promotion. She was doing a show overseas or somewhere. Again, don't quote me. Look up the story. But from what I remember, what I understand, she was doing a match with an African American woman, and some say that she was just being a heel. She was trying to get heat. Some say she just got in the heat of the moment and blurted this out. But apparently she used a very derogatory matter of fact, from what I remember and from what I read, she, at some point in the match, called this woman a black bitch. I believe is the quote from what I heard. And she claims she didn't. But there's multiple wrestlers who were backstage around the ring that saw her say it, that heard her ringside say it, and outed her out for it. And the outing came out real quick. The outing came out with Tessa Blanchard tweeted something somewhat not misogynistic, but it was her version of what she felt was an empowerment statement regarding women. And when she tweeted about this, a bunch of other women wrestlers who have worked with her were like, that's funny. You're tweeting all this woman empowerment stuff, but didn't you call so-and-so a racial slur? And didn't you also, they just started outing her about how misogynistic she kind of is.
Kind of like the Leah Michelle thing where
Exactly.
someone tries to like write something and then everyone's like, oh, you're being a complete hypocrite because you were the worst.
Exactly. And they were just like, you're full of shit. Like, you say horrible thing about other female wrestlers. You set women back 100 years. You're racist. They just started outing her. And that was really the first time I had ever really heard about Tessa Blanchard. And then I heard about her winning the heavyweight title. And I don't know. I don't know if that's a good idea for any. If those are true, and there are multiple accounts of people saying that it is true. If those are true, much like with these men that have been accused of sexual assault and rapings and all that, if that's really her persona and how she is as a person, again, she should be banned from us. She shouldn't be allowed to go to any promotion and flourish. Sorry, that racist shit don't fly with me. And being misogynistic when you yourself are a woman is ridiculous. So
yeah.
I don't know. To wrap this up, really, I guess Godspeed to her. I don't know. It's not my decision. I'm not Vince McMahon, and I'm not Tony Khan, or Cody Rhodes. I'm not these big promoters, so it's not up to me.
She's still fairly young. I'm hoping that if these stories are true, that she's able to sort of see the error of her ways and truly change and be different, and not just to be like, oh, I want to work with you guys, so I've changed and I'm different. But like, because I don't want to see anyone I want to see people punished, I guess. But like, if someone can change, that's what I want more than anything.
Yeah, absolutely. And she's gone on record of not really being apologetic for anything that she's been claimed or that she's been accused of. I don't see anything on social media that gears towards her giving any explanation other than her a lot of the things, her defense has just been flat out denying it.
Yeah.
And basically doing what a lot of people who usually are guilty are doing, and that's her basically just saying, you guys are a bunch of haters. Maybe, but when a lot of people are saying it, when you've got a good array of people accusing you of something, it probably, if not entirely, somewhat happened. Sorry. Something happened,
While we're on the topic of women wrestlers, who's your favorite woman wrestler of all time?
I don't really have a number one favorite. There's quite a few. If I could tell you one of my number one favorites, I was a huge and it's funny because I said this on my buddy's podcast, and it was a whole segment where they were just roasting me about it. But I made the point of saying that as a teenage boy, I had a wet dream about Trish Stratus. Yes, I did. And I'm willing to admit that here on the show as a grown man. I loved Trish. I just thought she was hot more than anything. Obviously, when Trish came in, she came in more so as just eye candy and grew to be actually a really good wrestler and a good worker. But, all the females of the Attitude Era, not all of them, but a good majority of them, were workhorses, dude. Chyna, Trish Stratus, Lita,
Jacqueline, Ivory.
I actually met Ivory. She was a sweetheart. I met Ivory when I was 14. She was the nicest lady. She could not believe I knew who she was. She could not stop hugging me. It was great. She was such a nice lady. They were workhorses, dude. And don't get me wrong, the female wrestlers, the divas of today, or the women wrestlers, they don't really go by divas too much anymore. They work their asses off. A lot of these new age female wrestlers are really good. They're really good. They would put a lot of the older wrestlers to shame. The Charlottes, the Sashas, the Baileys, even the Asukas, the Kairi Zanes. Like, these women are insanely good. They're really good workers. But it was just something about those Attitude Era girls to where those girls took an ass kicking from the men too. Like, and it wasn't this ideology of, well, it's a male dominated thing. These men just want to beat up on women. It's like, no, these women wanted to be accepted equally, and we're telling these men, listen, don't go easy on me when we get in this ring. Treat me like you would another male wrestler. And that's what the male wrestlers did. That's what the Stone Colds and the Rocks and the New Age Outlaws and the Mick Foleys, when they got in the ring with these women, they laid their shit in. They were stiffing these women there, and it's because they wanted them to. It was about equality, but people would kind of deem that as, well, it's misogyny. It's just a bunch of men that want to beat up on women. No, these women just wanted to be equal. And for as much as the men were kicking their ass, these women were laying into these men. And these men were bumping around for these women. They were literally taking bumps, taking ass kickings, and, rightfully so. And it's just something about that era. Those women were just, they were just, but, I would have to go with Trish, Lita, Chyna, all those names aforementioned. Those to me are the unsung heroes. And I don't even want to say unsung heroes because, Trish, Lita, they're in the Hall of Fame. Jacqueline's in the Hall of Fame. Ivory is in the Hall of Fame. So they are noted as being praised for their accolades. But, they tend to forget about them sometimes, and they immediately want to go to the Charlottes. And these girls are great workers, but they did not take the ass kicking that those girls did. Those girls, listen, they paved the way for this new age of wrestlers. And listen, kudos to them. And I miss that era.
I do think that, like,
what's your opinion, Vince?
I think, well, one, Trish is my favorite of all time.
I love Trish.
I think that you're right. She was brought in as eye candy, and she was yes. gorgeous. Still is. But like, what I love about her is not only, like, obviously as a teenage boy how she looked, but when she started, she was okay on the mic.
Let's just get it out there. Did you have a wet dream about Trish too, Vince?
I've had certain dreams about her. I've no question.
Nice.
So I don't know why you're being roasted, because I feel like that's just something that is a rite of passage.
Oh, she was so hot.
Trish was she was like just okay on the mic at first, and she wasn't very good in the ring, but she was like focused, and she worked her ass off, and she got better on the mic. She became one of the best women in the ring. And to the point where she and Lita was already more established in the ring in terms of like the high flying, Hurricane Ranas and like the Team Extreme stuff with the Hardy Boys. But when Lita and Trish would like work together, because they were the best, they were the most charismatic, and they're also the most popular women in the company at the time.
It's safe to say they were the female versions of The Rock and Stone Cold.
Exactly. I see them as the women version of Rock and Stone Cold, especially at that time, where they also were you'd also say they were like Hogan and Macho Man, because they kind of
Shawn and Bret Hart.
They made it something bigger, like women's wrestling at that point. Like, they didn't invent women's wrestling. Women's wrestling's been around for years and years, but during the Attitude Era, it kind of had gone back to, puppies and bra and panty matches, and they definitely competed in those as well. Even when Trish and Lita were done, that still happened. But you look at a lot of the women who are in the WWE now, and some of them obviously will, like, Charlotte's going to be like, oh, who do you look up to? I looked up to my dad. And I'm sure there's other women who look up to The Rock and Stone Cold. But a lot of these women also looked to Trish and Lita as being like, look at them doing it. Yeah. I can do that too. And you don't have to just come out and be like a little skirt and have your like chest exposed. Like, you can actually put on great matches. They main evented Raw, I remember one time, where like Lita almost broke her neck jumping out of the ring.
I remember that.
And also there was the rivalry between them on screen was incredible, but they were like best friends off like screen, and still are to this day. And I think it's great, because as great as Chyna was, rest in peace, the knock I heard on Chyna was that one of the knocks I heard on her was that she wasn't very helpful at bringing other women under her wing, and she was looking out for her spot. She was like, all right, I had to fight, scratch and claw to get here. I'm doing everything I can to keep this going. Where Trish and Lita are more open and helpful, and to this day are still kind of like mentors and go-to figures for like sort of the younger generation. So
absolutely.
So that's why I probably have Trish as my number one. Lita's up there too. But in terms of underrated, because you were saying that like the Ivories and the Jacquelines, I'm watching a lot of old Raws from like 98 around now.
Yeah. Good era. Good time in wrestling.
And they weren't given a lot to do necessarily, but they could do it. And then I think when Molly Holly and Victoria started coming, at the time Trish and Lita had already sort of established not a pecking order, but like, all right, here's the level of what people are expecting us to do in the ring. And it didn't quite happen overnight with them, but they, I think, were the driving force in why women's wrestling in the Revolution is today what it is.
Yeah, they're the original women's revolution, or they definitely are trendsetters, and they paved the way for all these girls, and a lot of women, I should say. These women should be very appreciative, because those girls, not only did they, like I said, they had to take an ass kicking, they also had to scratch and claw and make it to where there was equality amongst the women's division with the men's division, to where we now have all female pay-per-views now.
Yeah.
To where we have women main eventing WrestleMania, the women's world, huge, and they're going to do it again, and they're going to do it quite a few more times, or that's not going to change now. You're going to have women main eventing pay-per-views and major wrestling events. And it was those women taking the ass kicking that they did to make it so where Charlotte and Ronda Rousey and Becky Lynch can main event a WrestleMania. Those girls weren't even made. It's sad, because as great as that era was, a lot of them women were still under the thumb of male oppression, I should say. I don't want to use the word oppression, but they were under the thumb of male power, and they didn't get to main event really anything. They had moments where they were able to shine, but they didn't get the things that the women of wrestlers of these days get now. There were no all women pay-per-views. There were there's not one woman that ever main evented any pay-per-view or any WrestleMania during that time. So the fact that they had to beat themselves up just to get to that point, these women do owe them. I don't want to say they owe them, but they should be thanking them. They should be thanking them before they say their favorite is Stone Cold or The Rock or Macho Man. Before they say any of the men, they need to be showing appreciation and really saying that, hey, it's the Trishas, the Litas, the Jacquelines, the Ivories and the Chynas that I look up to. They should be making it a point of giving them props before the men.
Yeah. Last thing I'm going to say on this subject is something that just came to my head. There's a women's wrestler named April Hunter, and she was tweeting. They were talking about like women's wrestling, and she mentioned a point that I thought was very astute. She said that, have you noticed that like the women's changing in wrestling, especially WWE, went from like bra and panties. The reason why they're not doing that anymore kind of stopped when a lot of the women wrestlers were daughters of the wrestlers.
Yes.
So like I'm not saying like Ric Flair or the Hart family like were fans of this to begin with, but there was like you could see the company all of a sudden being like, we don't feel comfortable sort of exploiting these women in that way when it's like their own daughters.
Yeah.
So it was very, I don't know. The point that she made was kind of, it's like, it's good that they're not really relying on that so heavily anymore, but it kind of sucks that it took like, oh, we don't want it to be your daughter. And it's like, all right, but you were willing to let it to be other guys' daughters. Like you didn't, as long as it was someone else's, any other woman, it was fine. But once it's your own daughter, it's like, no, we can't do that. We have to treat them with respect. They have to be like just like the men.
Yeah, and you're right. It shouldn't get to that. And with to really just wrap this up, as far as this, speaking on behalf of the women wrestlers, it is great to have a wet dream about Trish Stratus when you're 14. It is unacceptable to be having a wet dream about Trish Stratus when you're a grown-ass man, or any wet dreams at that for that matter. So the moral of the story of this whole segment is, if you're an adult, don't have wet dreams. All right. That's what you all should have got out of that, was just listen. don't have grown man wet dreams. It ain't cool.
I feel you harp on the wrong things when it comes to wrestling. You harp on the Sean Waltman sex tape with China.
Oh,
you
man,
harp on the wet dreams.
What can I say?
Like,
I'm ambitious. What can I say? I'm a go-getter, Vince. I am a go-getter.
Poor choice of words, maybe, in this aspect. All right, before we close out the show,
yes.
It's time for a segment that has personally become one of my favorites.
Yeah.
And we have her again on the line.
Let me let her in. She's hold on.
And then let me do the proper introduction.
You guys, this is so special. I just love when she comes here. Oh God. Let me go get her. Hey, what? Hi, Whoopi. Hey, how are you? Come sit down. Hey, how you doing, Vince?
Great, Whoopi. Welcome. Thanks again for coming back and being part of Whoopi Rants on Wrestling.
Oh yeah, it's just so great to come here. I love you guys. I really do. How are you, Vince? Handsome as usual.
Oh, thank you. We'll be very, very much appreciative.
Oh yeah. Look, I'm so glad. I'm so glad that the women are getting their just due, aren't you? The women of wrestling.
Absolutely. I think it's been a long time coming.
Oh yeah. I remember the Alundra Blazes. I go back as far as the Fabulous Moolahs and Mae Young, rest in peace. The women revolution is really it was very underrated years ago, but now hell we got Bailey's and Sasha's and what's the tall girl? I don't really know her name. I think her father is the guy that says "whoa."
Charlotte.
Charlotte. Oh, sorry, it slips my mind sometimes. Ric Flair's daughter. Oh God, she's she's really incredible. She's built like a stop sign, but she's great. I love how athletic she is. And if anybody deserves a lot of credit, it's Charlotte, But like you guys were talking about, I remember Ivory and Trish Stratus. Those were real trends. And Jack, don't get me started on Jackie. Yeah,
you talk about Jackie. Please let me know your thoughts on Jackie.
Well, she's a Hall of Famer. She's great, and if I had to put my money on any black female empowered wrestler, it'd have to be Jacqueline. She's great.
She is.
And in the 80s, I did a movie called Burglar. Remember Burglar?
Yes.
And I myself was a trendsetter, and I did The Color Purple, and I did Jumpin' Jack Flash, and I just paved the way, just like Jackie did, right? She just a way, a pave wayer. I just love that term. Vince, you really are handsome. God, don't tell your wife I say this, but I would listen. Ted Danson, he wouldn't have had a chance if you were around. Oh God. Well, listen, I want to bring my friend Jim Cornette on the show. We're really good friends. And I want to bring him on The View, and I want him to do the things that I do, and I really express about wrestling because it's passionate for me. You know that, Vince?
Yeah,
it is. And you know what else is passionate? When I did The Color Purple. You remember when I did The Color Purple? God, I won an award and I got a lot of accolades, and then I did Ghost. I actually won an Academy Award for Ghost, but you were probably too young to remember.
No, I remember it was well deserved. You did a fantastic job in that movie.
Oh, thank you, Vince. Oh God. Listen, I really want to bring you and Laren on The View. Can we arrange that somehow? I know there's a pandemic. There's a pandemic. but there's a lot we could, you scratch my back, I scratch yours, and boy, I would definitely scratch your back, Vince.
All right, we'll be.
Sorry.
All that aside, we would love to be on the show. I think I speak for LAREN and myself. We would love to be on The View when things die down.
And look, I just want to tell all your viewers, support women wrestling. These women are incredible. They're really good. They're really gifted, and I'm just so proud of them. I really am. And I'm proud of you guys, and I can't wait to rant again. I love doing this. This is greater than when I did The Color Purple.
God. One of your great movies.
Oh, it was. And I still got to tell you about Steven Spielberg. Hey, listen, I love doing this segment. I got to get out of here. I got another date. I got another date with Ted.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he apologizes for the whole blackface thing. That was my idea, but listen, he's really sorry. He really is. He's outside waiting for me right now. Hey, listen, go make sure when you get a chance, go out, get Burglar, The Color Purple, and Jumpin' Jack Flash on Blu-ray. They got to be on Blu-ray now by this point, right? Technology.
So.
All right. If not,
Criterion edition, I'm sure.
Oh, God. Well, listen, I got a VHS copy at the house if you guys want it. I just think it's so great. I really love you guys. Hey, I'm going to get out of here. But I appreciate you. And let me know when I can come back. I'll always talk about wrestling. I'm a mark. Vince. Yeah.
Love having you here. Whoopi Goldberg, everyone.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Multi-talented, award-winning.
Bye, Vince. I'm talking. Oh, God. Oh, God. Thank you, Whoopi. Oh, God. Damn. Oh, God. Hey, Ted. All right, bye, Whoopi. Whew. Boy, I tell you.
Ted's still married, so I'm a little concerned about that.
Whoopi, I tried to warn her. I tried to warn her that some people might watch the show and she might get herself in some trouble. But she loves that Ted. My God, she is America's grandmother. Wow, what a great woman.
National treasure.
All right, national treasure, indeed.
Right.
All right. Well, with that being said, send us out, Vince.
We did another one. Hey, we did another episode. Look at us.
Yes. I mean, 2 in the can. 2 in the can, man. It reminds me of the from Ghostbusters 2 when they capture their first ghost afterlife. They're like 1 in the box, ready to go. Baby, what is it? Ready to go. We be fast and they be slow.
Slow. Yes.
Little Ghostbusters 2 reference there. So we've got 2 in the can, man. We've got 2 in the box, and we're ready to go. So with that being said, let's go ahead and send ourselves out. I want to thank you guys for joining us on another episode of a great show that me and Vince came up with. And with that being said, I guess there's only one thing left to say, that I am your wonderful, talented, big-headed, son of a gun host, LAREN Moore.
And I'm gradually getting better, Vince Eustace.
We're going to get you some more adjectives, man. We really do. We will. Hey, you guys. Thank you guys for joining us. And this was the second episode of Popcorn
and Blues.
Bye-bye, everybody. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. See ya. Gotta go.